Yeah, I can tell what's in Hawaii. Thank you for coming out in the rain. You're here because you love history. And anybody who loves history, I'm like your BFF. Oh, yes, please.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the inauguration of this new season of the Rancho Bernardo Historical Society Speaker Series. I'm Vincent Rossi. I'm the coordinator of the program, Speakers Program, and I'm very happy to have you all here. And just for preliminary talk, I'd like to invite you to sample some cookies or candy, and we have a bottle of water over at the table there. And of course, the program, you're welcome to enjoy it. You're also welcome to check out our museum and the information we have about our historical society. For those of you who aren't members already, you might want to be interested in looking into some of our activities that we'll be doing, including this series, which continues in February, on February the 9th, with a talk on the history of the Bernardo Winery by Ross Rizzo Jr., the president and winemaker of the winery. I also want to ask you to please turn off or mute your cell phones. I always have to remind myself of that.
Yeah, me too, thank you.
Leave your hair on.
And now I will introduce our speaker for today. Sandra Bonura is a member of the faculty at Azusa Pacific University. She has published 4 works on the history of the Hawaiian Islands. Her latest is Light in the Queen's Garden, Ida Mae Pope, Pioneer for Hawaii's Daughters, which will be available for sale today, and it forms the focus of her talk today. So I'm very happy to welcome Sandra Bonura.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Okay, so a little caveat, as I was telling some of the people earlier who came, this is like the very first time I've been out of bed in 3 weeks since before Christmas. I'm never sick. I have 0 sympathy or empathy, usually for 6 people. I'm like, get over it. Now, I've been so sick. And I think I have God's grace and favor all over me, because here I am. The antibiotics kicked in about 3 days ago. I'm here. I have a sucker in case I cough. I want to ask your forgiveness for coughing if I need to, and I'm probably going to sit down. And that might be a little hard for some of you, but there's no microphone, so I can use my lungs. I have been teaching a long time, from elementary through college, so I have no problem being heard if I need to. But I understand that, you know, this may not be adequate for you. Is there anybody that can't hear me? All right, awesome. Well, we don't have speakers today on the machine. That weren't working, so there will be some slides. I'll go fast because there'd be no point. I haven't even opened up this PowerPoint since last July when I was Author of the Month down. I was selected for Author of the Month in San Diego, downtown. I put this PowerPoint together. Haven't looked at it since. So you're getting Sandy unplugged. I have no idea what I'm going to say. It's going to be a surprise to me when I see the slide, because I'm not getting any younger. So here we go. Is there any questions at the outset before I start? And you can stop me. I know there's a lot of people here who have a lot of, aloha in their hearts and their spirits for Hawaii. Maybe you've lived there, maybe you've written about it, maybe you travel there. Stop at any time, raise your hand, shout out. We're all friends, right? Right. I welcome all interruptions, unless they're criticisms, and then shut your mouth. And here I go already coughing. Sorry about that. So, a biography. The reason I have this up here is because this was my first undertaking of a biography. What a fun book to write, to get into someone's complete life. And I'll tell you how I came into Ida. As I speak, I have just finishing a biography on John D. Spreckles, who is the founder of San Diego. So I am heavy into this man's head, this whole business world. And we all know that Hawaiian money actually shaped San Diego and Coronado at the turn of the century. All the Hawaiian money right here. Sugar made us all. So here we go. I'll just start talking. Let's see what I got next. Yay! Oh, when I go to Hawaii, and I've spoken on all the islands at some point, in some wonderful venues, from grass lawns at historical societies, to the Iolani Palace, to just the most random, wonderful places. You never know what you're going to get in Hawaii. You really don't. It's just so fun to speak there. But the first thing I say is because there is a group of militant Hawaiians who going, "What you do with senior citizen Hallie from San Diego talking about our queen and coming over here and talking?" And I mean, there is that sort of thing. So, you know, that's always the elephant in the room. And I say, sometimes we don't choose the story chooses us. And in terms of me writing about Hawaii, it chose me. That's all I can say. I make no apologies. And let me tell you how it started. Probably in 2008, an archivist in Scripps Institution of Oceanography called me and said, "Hey, Sandy, I've got some love letters here." And she was about to retire. "Do you want to read them?" I'm like, "Love letters?" She says, "Yes, they're from a missionary teacher in Hawaii to her fiance, who's going to Harvard." And they're just, I typed them all. I'm about to retire. She's been 35 years the archivist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, which is actually no longer there, sadly. The library, the archives, they moved to the main campus, to the Geisel, for those of you who are researchers. So I said, sure, I did. And I'll just briefly tell you that when I started reading those letters, it had a profound, they just grabbed my heart when I started looking at these letters. This is a house in Berkeley, on Etna Street to be exact. The house was owned by Charles Kofoid, who's Julia Morgan, who also designed that big castle, what's that called? When this house sold in 8 minutes on the internet in a bidding war in 2009. It was so popular to get a house that had never been touched. Julia Morgan original. Charles Kofoid's a co-founder of Scripps Institution. And so when he died, and all the people who lived in this house hadn't touched a thing either, he and their children left, this attic was donated. And when the archivists were collating here in San Diego, these 5 trunks, here's one of them. I climbed up to this after the book was out. I went in reverse and I had to climb up to see where it all started. And it was the cataloging and the archivist and her staff, everything that you'd expect to find. Oceanography material, I mean, everything to do was, except for this one trunk that held rare Hawaiiana. Old photo albums of the kings and the queens of Hawaii and letters all in their original envelope for 3.5 years during the most pivotal time in Hawaiian history, the overthrow of the palace. So it's a lot of primary source. And when I started reading those letters, good golly, Miss Molly, they were the most riveting. I couldn't believe it. I never really knew how we took Hawaii. How that all happened. And then to read it from a female perspective and from a teacher. I had been originally after a teacher or principal in schools. Yeah, so these kinds of things, these letters grab our hearts when you're reading from another teacher talking about it anyways. So just to give you some idea, these letters became this book right here. They're edited. They're pretty awesome. And I thought, when I said to the archivist, it's so amazing. Do you mind if I start working with it and make it and see if I can get it published? She said, this book's not going to get published. No one wants to. I'm going, oh, I'm pretty sure this is important. Well, anyways, I'm happy to say she was wrong. So this was the letters from Carrie to Charlie. And it was during the writing of American Girl in the Hawaiian Islands. The reason that book has that title is in one of the letters she wrote to her fiancé, "Dear Charlie, one day when we're married, I want to write a book about my experience here, and I want it to be called American Girl in the Hawaiian Islands." Well, life got in the way. She never wrote her book, so I thought, I just got to name the book. This is what she wanted her story to be told. So these are all the teachers. They were in this one seminary, Kauai House Seminary. This is Miss Poe. When I was researching for that first book, this one jumped out of those pages right into my heart. I'm like, who in the heck is this? This is our amazing woman. And then I began to spread out across the United States looking for diaries, letters, descendants of all the teachers to get corroborative sources and to really get out the book. And all the letters, Ida Pope, Miss Pope kept jumping out. I'm like, okay, someday when this American Girl book is done, I'm going to look into her. It's a very meaty book, this latest book. This is just through chapter 9. It is now being used as a primer for people in Hawaii. This book came out in November, and it's sold out in 6 weeks, the whole first printing. For some weird reason, Germany, there's a whole climate for Germany, and Hawaii just completely sold out because it's brand new. Now we get why. Because in this book, all the political unrest that happened in Hawaii with America is now being reported by my ladies. All my teachers, not 1, 2, 3, 5 ladies are reporting on it, and they're all together and they're dissecting, they're experiencing it. Pretty cool. So it's, you know, when you're writing, any writers here? Oh, Vincent.
Emails.
Well, I hope you use good punctuation. I like punctuation in my emails, gosh darn it. Anyways, I had to research my character. I had to put her in her context. So I couldn't just throw out a biography on Hawaii. So, okay, now, let me put her in and understand her. And so that 19th century, like, who doesn't want to write about 19th century? How fascinating. All the themes of that century are mind-blowing. If you think about the immigration, the expansion, rise of industrial America, women's rights, temperance, education, slavery, the Civil War, the reconstruction of the Civil War. What an amazing time to live through. And I thought, maybe I was born kind of out of my time. But then maybe not. Because had I been born in that century, really? My husband's going to own my children? I can't own my children. If I don't like him, I'm stuck with him. I can't divorce him. Can't initiate any contracts. It was a tough time for a woman to be heard. Makes you appreciate those women's rights ever so much, to think of the hurdles, the big hurdles she had to go through. And for Ida May Pope to go into a foreign country, a kingdom, and change it, given the rules and restrictions of her era, I'm like in awe of these women. Let me put into context for you right now the waves, if it were, of the teachers that went to Hawaii. In the early 19th century, they were the wives of the missionaries. And that was, oh boy. They went, you know, the Great Awakening happened, and they went along with their husbands who were going to be the missionaries and evangelize the islands. And they were saying, by the way, you're a woman, you're a teacher. Oh, you're having your own children? Okay, you're still a teacher too. So get all that. And they were exhausted. These teachers spread out all over the islands. The mid-19th century, we have our finished education. These are the teachers that now went to women's college. Anybody know that great women's college is? It sent out a lot of teachers from Massachusetts. Female college, probably first of its kind, Mount Holyoke. Those ladies, boy, they lived their calling. When they finished their education, they went and established all these boarding schools all over the islands, taking in orphans and children, and for the first time young women, and getting them an education. The 3 R's and a lot of domestic work. Okay, that's basically what they did. Miss Pope and her bunch represent the late 19th century, where we have our first co-ed colleges in America. Does anybody know the first ever one? It's in Ohio.
Oberlin?
Yes, sir. You're getting a gold star. Oberlin. Underground Railroad. Those students in Oberlin hid the slaves that were running. There's some amazing stories that came out of Oberlin. So right now you can tell that Holyoke here, excuse me, that's still Oberlin. Ida Pope is from the class of 1886. What do you already see about her class photo that that's different than previous decades?
They're black people.
There are black people. Can you be more specific? Black women. Oh my gosh, that's like phenomenal. So by the time she gets to Hawaii, she's already got these ideas of interracial, these huge ideas of interracial relationships, and they're already so much more progressive. But when Ida Pope graduated, she didn't actually get a degree at that time because young women didn't get degrees. You weren't a man, you didn't need one, so you got this little certificate. You did the same coursework as the man, but you got a certificate. Very interesting. When Ida went over to Hawaii, she didn't have this altruistic, at that point, Ida and her cohort. It's because America was in shambles. This was heading for the first huge depression in America, the soup lines people. Nobody was eating. Ida's own father lost his business. It was just a terrible, terrible time in America. There were no jobs. And women at that time were going, hey, college educated, especially Oberlin, we really want you now. Because those Holyoke teachers were exhausted and tired and getting married and, you know, whatever. So Oberlin, you want some money, you're going to live rent-free, you can sit at home and help your family. If you have an education, we have a place for you. You can keep your reputation intact because you're going to live in boarding schools, right, with the girls. This might be, I was going to say Madsen because I have some Madsen people here, but I don't think so. So anyway, this is the seminary they went to. I've actually written up this whole history of this. I'm kind of known in Hawaii for some weird random things. This is one of them. I get emails regularly from people who want to know about their tutu, their aunties, or on the American side, their aunties who were teachers here. And so I'm called on about the history of this school that was in a partnership with the Hawaiian government and the missionaries. It was really a collaborative event that has no parallel. So there you go. Oh, fun fact, you guys know who Father Horton was in San Diego? You've heard Horton Plaza. He married her later, so San Diego. So this is Koyasa, it was a lady killer. Hey, it was no joke. That's Carrie Winter in the back of her class, Carrie of the American Girl book. That's her in the back of her classroom with her girls. It was a real joy to return photos like this that came from the trunk of the attic that was in scripts to the people finding the Hawaiians who are related to these because Carrie labeled their names, making Ancestry.com things that I would use. And by the way, is your great-grandmother, you know, Malia Kapali? Well, yes, it is. Would you like to see a picture of her? What? We have no picture. Oh, would you like to see a student essay I have she wrote when she was 12? What? Those are the kinds of fun stories I got to collect, returning those things across Hawaii. Oh, wonderful, wonderful thing. You know, it was a Hawaiian tradition when Grandpa died, you burned it. He's gone, the spirit's gone, burn his stuff. That makes it very, very hard for the descendants to try to piece together their stories because that was the custom, to burn everything, all documents. So that's why Hawaii has this huge fervor for oral histories now. Anybody who's in, you know, you go past 80, let's get a video camera on you right now. Nobody does oral histories better than Hawaiians because they've been ripped off from their history. So when someone like me comes with all these artifacts of your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers and your grandfathers, it's not to be taken lightly. This is Ida Pope.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
On the last caption, it said the lady killer. What's the context of that
Oh, oh my gosh. The context is that teachers kept begging the trustees for everything. This school is killing us. We need supplies. We need anything. As a matter of fact, it's literally a lady killer. There is in the Oberlin school files of a teacher who worked there, the cause of death, overworking in Honolulu school. That is the cause of death.
So the lady weren't the killer, they were being killed.
They called the school, the Kauai Seminary was the lady killer.
Okay.
Yeah, so the turnover was immense with these teachers. They couldn't handle it. These young women, they're away from their family, they didn't have teacher training back then. You had an education, go teach. They didn't know how to manage an entire house of, hormonal girls at the same time. Imagine 5 teachers to 142 Hawaiians that didn't want to be in these outfits. They wanted to be barefoot on the beach. This was really rough.
Are these teachers?
She's the teacher, these are students.
Oh, okay.
These are girls, these are high school girls. And this picture was taken in 1892.
How were the students selected, or what brought them to the school?
Oh, that's a very good question. Some of them were handpicked by Queen Liliuokalani herself because she had an educational society for the young women in Honolulu because she wanted better for the girls, so they're orphans. Their parents are on Molokai with leprosy, or they're the daughters of Hawaiian missionaries that were saved in the first part, so they're gone up, and so they're here by hook or crook. You've got kids attached to the royal household, and you've got a girl that doesn't have anybody, and she's poor as dirt. So what a cross section. And Carrie, in her letters, and this book talks. Some of the letters, I only have like 4 books of it. I'm not here really to sell books. I have like 8 books. But if you wanted me to have my author's prize, and she talks about these girls, it's just like eye-opening.
So that's a boarding school.
That's a boarding school. And this is her sister Catherine, who came out later. As if any of you, well, I think I have a slide. Who knows if I have a slide, but I may have a slide there to show you where this is. Remember when my teachers arrived on the pier from their steamships? Hawaii was a recognized monarchy patterned after the British monarchy. It was legitimate. When Queen Elizabeth had her Jubilee, Hawaiian monarchy they rolled up just as another monarchy. Some of the English royalty were godparents to some of the royal family's children. So you had a real established monarchy.
Elizabeth I.
Elizabeth, yes. But this is King David Kalakaua. Excuse me, Victoria. Thank you. Hold me accountable. I just said, yeah, sure, I'll just agree with you. It was Lucy. Sure, that was it. So this is Ida's observation. She thought he was a real good-looking guy. Carrie thought he was just fat and oafy looking. It's so different to read different perceptions. So this is Ida and Carrie actually took the train together when they arrived. Ida was older. They arrived in the fall of 1890, and then King Kalakaua was dead within months. That king that Ida was so in love with. He actually, I think San Diego actually killed him. I'm telling the whole story. Actually, that story's in Ida's book about how King Kalakaua, not well, he wanted to come see his friends and his benefactors, the Spreckles family in San Francisco. And at that time they said, you don't look well, King. You need to go down to the Hotel del Coronado. My son John, he owns a hotel there now. So David Kalakaua arrives in December of 1890 at a Hotel del Coronado. It's a big banquet for him. Our city band breaks out the thing. San Diego greets him with, pomp and ceremony for a king visiting San Diego. He's the first monarch to stay at the Hotel del Coronado. Anyways, I doubt he enjoyed that banquet much because he right away left with his retinue, went back to San Francisco, barely made it up to his room at the palace, and died in San Francisco. And in those days, the cable under the, everybody in America knew the King of Hawaii was dead, except for those in Hawaii. They had no way of going. They waited for the next steamer to come with the paper. There was no cable. So when he arrived, they say when his ship came around Cocoa Head, with our president put him on an American warship with the flag at half mast. We're like going, uh-oh, this can't be good. And of course it was not. This is the kids going to the funeral, describing to see their king lay in state. When King Kalakaua died, this is John D. Spreckles' very dear friend. They were close, close, close. And this is like the principal, remember Kauai Seminary, the boarding school? She then began putting kids all over, I mean, every kid from other islands, grandparents, can you please raise my granddaughter? I'm too old, too tired. She said, oh sure, bring her. So, but the Queen was in and out of that school like it was no one's business. She was scrutinizing the American teachers. And when she walked in, all the kids would, bow down and beg, it was a whole thing. Which some of the teachers said, oh, the Queen visited us in their letters, and another lady in the letters like, oh my gosh, why doesn't she stay in the palace? She's so upsetting. Every time she walks in here, my girls have to stand up. And she says, we didn't have a Boston Tea Party for nothing. She's not like Queen. They don't like teachers. It has a mixed opinion about the whole thing. And what is that? So that's one of the slides that has notes down to it. You're not missing anything really. It's a documentary I was in, talking about this education of girls and the Queen, which is like, it's a whole Hawaiian movie. There's this big white face like here. And it's like, it's so random. They don't say who I am. That actually did some talking. Did you hear that?
Yeah, on the computer.
Well, whatever. That was interesting. So as soon as Ida Pope, someone of her character, got in charge of that school, she's like, oh, Queen, these trustees, they're congregational ministers, they were prudent. They weren't going to let a nickel leave their coffers. And she says, why aren't we just teaching the kids, all these girls to sew and cook? They need careers. She represented, these teachers in the late 19th century, they were represented, an education. So they wanted their girls to have an education like they had. So Ida Pope said, we need them to be reading the great classics. And we need them to be acquainted with poetry and art and geography. They're like, what? Absolutely not. She fights with them every step of the way. Then she says, why don't I just go around you and partner with the Queen of Hawaii? And that's exactly what she did. And this just established that her and the Queen are thick as thieves now. And remember those letters, some of those essays I told you I was able to return? It was stacked full of them, but there's just a couple. They're all in the book. Every one of them have been done with this. This is a researcher's dream. I want to write a book about teachers and their experiences and all the history and talk about children. Now I get to see what the children themselves said about being Hawaiian at the time. Wow, what a holistic look for me. It's just pure joy as a former teacher to bring the voices of the children. I had like 8 of those essays. They're like multiple
The
pages.
penmanship is certainly nice in that.
Yes.
Our kids can't write now.
No, they don't.
No.
No, they don't. That was very, very important. And then Miss Pope said, you know what, why are they just being darning socks? If they're going to, let's teach them to be dressmakers and fine underwear and tablecloths and things that they could actually earn a living with when they left the boarding school. And that was one of my very funnest chapters to write in Light in the Queen's Guard. Does anybody know what this word means? Palikia in Hawaiian means trouble. And there was lots of trouble in a boarding school. Oh my gosh, harsh discipline. Some of the discipline that I read in American Girl book, I remember one night reading it for the first time. I was like, I cried. I cried and cried and cried. My nightgown was wet because some of these girls were locked in closets with only water for 3 days because they disobeyed. Some of them were strapped with leather whips. It broke this mother's heart. It broke this teacher's heart. And wow. So that's the kind of things that have been going on in some of these schools with the boys' schools too, because I got diaries and letters from all the boys' schools going on, the Kamehameha School for Boys. Whoa! So I got to learn about some of the retaliation that the kids did, and that was fun, and what a hard job it was for these teachers. They were really out of their league, except for Ida Pope, who had experience as a teacher. She was cut from a different cloth. And she wasn't a New England Congregationalist teacher like the other ones were all over the islands for the decades. She was from Ohio, and her family were Democrats. She was cut from the different cloth. Carrie was always going, when Charlotte, Miss Pope was playing cards. Oh, Miss Pope, do you know what her views are on dancing? Oh, she approves of dancing? It's very interesting. She's definitely cut from the same cloth. She was hardy. Some of the
Yeah, excuse me. Who was doing the reading? The teachers?
teachers,
So a lot of the teachers weren't very good.
no, they were not. You'll read about some funny teachers in these books. So one of them was absolutely insane. Ida Pope had to take her to an insane asylum.
Oh, my.
That story's crazy. And then there's these two teachers that came, were always drinking and partying. Oh, good grief, it's fun writing, I'll tell you that. Well, Ida Pope out there, and she says, not one child here will be touched. What the heck are you people doing? This is outrageous. One of my favorite chapters to write, because I've always had this morbid fascination with the island of Molokai, you know, and leprosy. I don't know, just kind of morbidly fascinates me. And she actually goes with the Queen on her ship. And what a story that was to write that chapter. This is actually a very rare photo. These are girls from Kauai House Seminary who have leprosy, and they're in a holding room at a hospital, Kaliki Hospital, getting ready to be transported to Molokai. So, heartbreaking stories there. Some family members kidnapped these girls and ran with them to keep them from going over to Molokai. Horrific stuff. So, this is a picture of Molokai, and just within months of her ascending the throne, she said to the people of Honolulu, Queen Liliuokalani did, she said, if any of you have family members who are on the island afflicted with the disease, I am making a visit and you are welcome to join me, make application to the palace. Board of Health came out and said, hell no, none of y'all are going. First of all, it's against the law. Secondly, this queen is off her rockers. No wise sovereign would subject herself to perhaps contracting the disease that have put these unfortunates over there. And by the way, we're not allowing anybody to go. Well, she overruled them and said, I'm the queen. Of course they're going. Well, Miss Pope said, Ida Pope, boy, she was furious. She said, well, you know, I think I'll go with her. I think we have some students over, I know we have some students over there. I'm going to take them letters from the family and some schoolwork and check on their welfare. So she made application to the Board of Health. Board of Health goes, okay, maybe we couldn't overrule the Queen because she's the sovereign of these islands, but you're an American, you're going zippo nowhere, shut your mouth, stay home, stop talking. Well, Ida's whole story is so funny. She said, oh, we'll see about that. She marches up to the palace, you know, gets entrance into the Queen, explains to her how important it is for her to go. Queen gives her royal permission for Ida Pope to go on this Molokai visit with her in the first act of rulership. Ida's story about her walking on the gangplank to go up, waving the papers to the Board of Health people is just classic Ida. Question?
Was Father Damien in the picture?
Father Damien had just died. For those of you acquainted with the story, know Mother Marian. Right, we have Catholics here? No Catholics in this room? All right, we have two Catholics. Mother Marian. These women are, she's now sainted. And Ida spends the afternoon with Mother Marian, visits Father Damien's grave. Mother Marian is running the home there. Her stories, this is one of my favorite chapters of the book. Her spending the afternoon going all over the island, seeing what the Catholics have done. The sacrifice. There's no other, that sacrifice, what they did, their lives. That would be, oh, that's a shame. This is, I'm sorry you're not going to hear. That documentary I'm in, Ida Pope has written a letter. It's foundational now since the book came out. Dear Lois, that's her sister in Bucyrus, Ohio. She's writing out her visit to Hawaii, and they have an actor that's reading the letter. The whole letter's in there, but next time we'll see that. This book is, you guys familiar with this book?
Yes, I read it, I bought it.
Awesome, the sequel's coming out. So he's on a book tour here, Alan Brenner. He'll be here in San Diego in March on the sequel to this book. This book is also, he was one of the people who reviewed the book, the author of Molokai. And I've never known him before. The publisher sent it to him, but he now talks about Ida's visit and some of the stories. Well, this was the toughest chapter in the book for me to write, because I thought to myself, this is where I can get crucified real quick by the other researchers of Hawaiian history, especially, you know, the militant ones, those PhDs at the University of Manoa. It is the revolution, it is the overthrow, and it's all primary source material, and I had to get it right. It probably took me a year to write that chapter, just making sure everything was corroborated, everything was right. So just to kind of put into context, over there with the red arrow down, that's the school, that's Kauai House Seminary. And you guys know Hawaii, some of you here know where the big palace is? Look how close the school is. The Queen just had to walk back and forth to see if, make sure things going well at the school. Across the street is Kauai House Church, still there today. My favorite place to attend any service. It's been there since 1819. It came built there. Mission House Museum, just to put it in perspective.
Where's the bishop?
The Bishop Museum, that would be up.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be out of this shot here. And then you can see Spreckles Bank here, that's our Spreckles. So he had already laid down his, roots in San Diego at this time during this whole thing. And these girls were like, all the American teachers like going, oh my gosh, what is happening? We're being invaded? These girls are crying, they're scared, what's going on? Our king just died. Now there's 1,200 men in back of the school going, oust the queen, oust the queen. Can you imagine the frightening tenor in a school like that? These poor little girls who have no other home. Most of them have no other home. They were lost. And all the teachers in the school, it's interesting to see their different views. They're like, yay, finally we get an American flag over here. And the other teachers are going, what the heck? Why are you messing with this monarchy, these beautiful people? So a lot of different information. And the boys' school up the hill, those boys got rifles. And they were shooting. Miss Pope said, we got to keep these girls calm. Turn the clocks back. Let's keep them sewing. Let's sing. Don't let them be in the dorms themselves. We're going to sleep with you. Everybody's going to be together. She had to be a stabilizing force. And I have a diary that's a minute-by-minute blow of this whole thing by this one teacher named Lilla Appleton. Now, Mr. Castle, you guys ever heard of, you're old enough to know Castle and Cook? Well, Castle and Cook, this Mr. Castle, this showed up in the Boston Evening Transcript. Well, you know what, this queen must have been, she had some good traits of character mingled in with Ingle, but if she had just shut her mouth and quit trying to change things, she'd still be there. They wanted, the white rulers of the time wanted the queen to reign, but not rule. Remember, the English monarchy only reigns, they don't rule. But in Hawaii, they ruled and reigned. They were the government. That was very different. That's how they had been from time immemorial through all the Kamehameha lines. So that's a horrible, hurtful thing for Her Majesty, who actually educated Castle, by the way. She had these girls in her school. Anyways, I want all my girls out of that school right now. Pack your bags, come on home. How dare you? I have supported this school for decades, and you who run this school, this is how you talk about me, and you overthrow me and lock me in my palace. Quite interesting. This essay is written by Lydia Oholo. When I was researching who in the heck she was, when I found this essay at the end of the hour, I thought, oh my gosh, this was the Queen's adopted daughter. She didn't have natural children. This was her adopted daughter. This is an important essay. And you can see she says how she talks about it. I was brought in school when I was 5. Her Majesty was not on the throne at that time. She was merely only a princess. And she talks about how the Queen came and gave her name and adopted her, took her back to her home in Honolulu and raised her. Miss Pope fell in love with this girl. And I had known that name as well because, remember, the book was done, but I was starting to work on Ida's Pope at one point. I had Ida's will. And she said, I leave and bequeath this huge chunk of money to a student named Lydia Oholo. And I'm like, Miss Pope, why are you leaving all this money to a Hawaiian student? You've got a couple spinster sisters who would have loved that money. I go, that was a really special relationship. There actually was a tug of war between the Queen and Ida for this child for a while.
She can't sit down on the floor like we do.
Your speaker's working.
What did she, or do you know what she thought about Gibson, Mary Gibson? Seemed to have caused so much.
Okay, so when I was putting the book together, I knew there was this book written on this purportedly oral tape recording up there from her when she was 98. She lived to be 102. Huh? I'm sorry, 101.
Yeah.
But anyways, when I went over to Honolulu, I met with her descendants because she didn't have children. I met with her great niece, and I said, well, hey, there's a lot of things in this book that are wrong. She says, oh, I know, that's just horrible. I'm going, well, this is foundational reading. This came right after that Mishnah book. What was it? Hawaii. It was Mishra's Hawaii and this book, foundational reading. Well, when I started reading, I was going, that's such a hogwash. Hawaiians love it because it says exactly what they want to hear, and I appreciate that. But it's not true. And when I began looking for it, I began contacting authors, researchers, everywhere I could all over Hawaii going, well, where's the tape? Let's all listen. They go, oh, honey, you're late to the game. We've been trying to find that tape for years. The author, Helena Allen, out of Redlands, California, adjunct instructor at San Bernardino Community College, told her people, I have destroyed all my research materials. And I said, and you believe that? No, where did she throw that out? So I began my own little late night researching. She died in 2003. He authored it. And so here's a weird, just long story short. From a Trader Joe's encounter, I found this tape at the Executor at his house in Redlands, California. She had hidden it in a closet. He bought the house out of his estate, and he was not a nice man. I drove up there to Redlands and said, and I'll never forget when they played that tape, I heard her voice for the first time. Again, there's a lot of emotions that happens with all this stuff. Knowing, you know, that she's been holding this tape of all people would love to hear her voice again. I mean, this was the Queen's daughter, so she was revered in Hawaiian history. Anyway, I found it. Long story again. We returned it to Hawaii. It made the front page of the Honolulu papers on a Sunday. This guy the journalist won some award for his formatting. What an amazing thing. Everybody looking at Hawaii, and I was too. It was. How do I get chosen to pick it? I don't know. I didn't do anything that special. But there it is.
She can't sit down on the floor like we do.
She's talking about the Queen, how the Queen had a limp. Anyways, again, you know, Ida Pope was so stellar when the Queen decided that we're going to now take Princess Powaki Bishop's money and start the Kamehameha School for Girls. Miss Pope, would you consider making Hawaii your permanent home? You've been here 3 years. We want nothing but you. The Queen loves you. Would you establish the school? And by the way, there'll be no more fundraisers. Do you know how much money we have? They have every dollar that the Kamehameha line owned. You know about big wars, right? They owned everything. They're so wealthy to this day. Kamehameha Schools is the wealthiest pile of money you have ever seen in Hawaii. She said, absolutely. And it's just, let's stop right here and revisit on this slide. So when they came here in 1890, there was a king. With the Holyoke ladies, they started out, they did the best they could, these teachers, and they just lived there. They lived their Christian faith out fine. But they didn't advance the girls anywhere. The girls were just, they like, okay, you're old enough, bye-bye, good luck. This group of educated teachers, late 18th, 19th century, they expanded the seminary, bringing in things, especially with Ida Pope at the helm, under Queen Liliuokalani. Ida Pope then, now the overthrow has happened. There is no more queen. There's a provisional government. This castle and cooks, there's like these 13 men who take over everything. Now it's this Kamehameha School under self-elected Sanford B. Dole. Not the pineapple Dole, people get that confused. That was a cousin. This is a missionary descendant, Sanford B. Dole. He's the president. She starts the school. Bishop, he married the Hawaiian princess. You know, you guys all heard of Princess Kailani, right? That's their niece. But she is fighting with him about everything. He's back in San Francisco because the princess dies a tragic death, breast cancer, so forth. And here comes this school, and here's an overview. The Bishop Museum, who was talking to me about the Bishop Museum? There's the Bishop Museum, right? Thick. That's the Bishop School of Boys. This is the original. And the girls were down here, so they couldn't get real close to the boys, but only a 6-minute walk. This is just a picture of her fighting with Mr. Bishop. He's going, do not use water anywhere in that school because there's this soil is ridiculous and we don't want to waste water. She disregarded everything. I'm sorry, the girls got 30 minutes for baths, let's make a garden, we're going to eat our own food. And Mr. Bishop says, by all means, do not give any nursing training. No, you can't have a hospital on the grounds. But Ms. Pope said that Hawaiian population is declining, they're dying. We need to train these girls so they can have children and they can go back into the communities and we can stop this race from dying. Absolutely not. Well, she disregarded them. She was the daughter of a doctor in Buenos Ohio. She loved basketball. She started the first basketball leagues. As you know, basketball was created in Springfield, Massachusetts from the missionary teacher from Kauai House Seminary. It was her son. It was the little peach baskets in Springfield, Illinois, from the Kauai House Seminary. A lot of little fun facts. Towards the late of the book, you realize after she has now raised hundreds of Hawaiian girls, you know what, I visited their homes and they're not prepared to go back to their communities. I may have been a part of taking their culture from them. So a lot of the end of the book is Ida taking them out into nature, teaching them to fish, teaching them to get acquainted with what their ancestors did. Hawaiian history became a required subject. All graduating girls then were told to research everything that their ancestors had done to make these islands so productive and beautiful. Her first graduating class, there's little Lydia Olo up there. Now she's 5 years old. She stayed with Miss Pope she went to Kamehameha schools. Now the Queen is now partnering with Ida. She's no longer the Queen, she's Mrs. Dominus now, living the life, and she's still very much close with Ida Pope. And her senior year, she realized that she don't have their culture, we gotta do something to remediate this. Also, we have told them when to brush their teeth, when to take their piano lessons, when to do their laundry. They don't know how to live on their own. So in the scene, she had this thing called senior cottage. So when you became a senior, you're going to live together and you're going to make your own lists. We're going to bring in some babies in and let's see what you do with that. This is really kind of revolutionary for its time. at the senior hall. Social settlement model. You know, out here in California, we don't really hear about, you know, social settlements the way that they do on the East Coast, you know, because they were sort of, I mean, Jane Hall, do you guys know who she is? From Jane Hall. Jane Addams with the Hull House. Where's the Hull House?
Chicago, right?
Chicago.
Yeah.
Good friend, Jane Addams is a very good friend, as was John Dewey with Ida Pope. They all visited her school there. And by the way, so Scripps, LMB Scripps, went and visited Ida's school and created Bishop School in La Jolla, patterned after Kamehameha School for Girls. Everybody was going to see what this one little 5'2", blue-eyed lady was doing for 24 years now in Honolulu. Her story is remarkable. People are coming from all over the world. She wanted to clean up the neighborhoods. This is the Palama neighborhood of Honolulu. Looks a little better today. Still very rough around the edges. Ms. Pope created the settlement model. She said, Jane Addams can do it in Chicago, we can do it here. Girls, grab your stuff. You're going to start teaching English. Okay, by the way, you want to be a teacher? You're teaching Sunday school. So just amazing. Well, let's go do their laundry. These kids are getting too much diseases. Let's fix them up. We're going to go in the community. I can't put everything I have into you girls, raising you, educating you, and this is a community you got to go back to. No, you have responsibility. This is the Sunday school she did. I don't know how she did it all, honestly. I want to yell at her in the book as I'm going, stop doing that, it's going to kill you. Let someone else do it.
It looks like there's a board.
Yes, this is the Palama Settlement. This is community. These are kindergartners, not at her school. She sends her girls down here. And do you know the settlement's still there today? There is not one plaque to her anywhere. I'm like, what? She's the founder, but this guy here who was 6 months, he gets credit. Ida Pope was there for 24 years. Oh, I fixed that. For kindergarten movement. Oh, this is just all crazy stuff when the, and you know, Queen was overthrown in 1893. We have the provisional government, and then it takes, you know, to 1898 before the official switch, and that is because of once the Spanish-American War happened, there was no going back. America said, well, we need the Hawaiian Islands, we need Pearl Harbor. Sorry, we're taking it. And by the way, Ms. Pope, can you send down 12 girls to lower the Hawaiian flag in the big ceremony? She says, no. And instead, she had the girls sing their patriotic songs all week in Hawaiian. This is I read Ms. Pope got some principal of Kamehameha schools over all 3 of them fired. I'm like, how would a nice lady get someone fired like that? Now I know why. Look at his agenda. This was at a conference in America. Can you read into that?
Yeah.
Shocking. No wonder she got him fired. Good for you, Ms. Pope. So, other things she did, the organization, she had this big social settlement. Oh my gosh. Then these girls, anyway, back in the 19th century, there's only one high school for all the islands. It was on Oahu. So if you lived in Kauai or Maui or the Big Island, tough. You're not going to school unless you had some place to live. So she created these homes where she became president of, as well as running the school, board of trustees, where these girls could work and live. And they became very important to the Queen later on. And there was, the list was so long, waiting list to get on. And so there was like 1, 2, 3, 4 of those homes that kept being, it was just amazing, amazing concept. So as the, I'll go back to this one here. The thing is, what she did, she went, all the while doing this, she goes back to the University of Chicago in the summer, and she takes these graduate courses, and she says, well, this is, I need to, she took graduate courses from the people that, my master's is in counseling, and all the foundations of the theories we had to learn, and they were her professors. I'm like, oh my gosh, because in those days there wasn't teacher training, you did it through sociology, back in the University of Chicago. So anyway, She has a social surveyor come out, survey all the islands and the working conditions, and then she says, my girls are working at the Dole Pineapple Factory and their feet are burned raw from pineapple juice. They're standing in all days. And so she had a little, just changing things like that, having slats where the pineapple, they could stand on slats where the pineapple juice could go. She was exhausted doing everything. You know, when you were her graduate, she was now a grandmother to all her kids. It was just really hard. She changed labor laws in Honolulu just before the World War I. So when the book was out, that's when I did a reverse. I went to her little hometown of Bucyrus, Ohio, and I spoke at the Bucyrus Historical Society. That was very sweet. The whole little town came forward with all their cookies, and I brought Ida home. I visited her grave. I went to Oberlin first. I went to University of Chicago, sat on the bench where I'm thinking maybe she sat here, you know. Let me walk the path. She might have walked. This is a foreword she wrote with her mission for the book after the social survey was done and labor laws were starting to be looked at closely. This is the greatest gift you can give in Hawaii. It's still practiced today. It's called hanai. Do you know what hanai is? Hanai is the act of adoption, but it's not legal. You raise each other's kids. Oh, you got too many kids? Come on. There's your new hanai mother. It was a real gift. In fact, the royalty did it. You know, they hanai'd each other's kids so they'd have rich relationships. I raise yours, you raise mine. That was just Hawaiian tradition. And it's still done today. You'll still meet kids who are, oh, I live with my hanai parents, and whatever reason. But the greatest gift they gave Miss Pope in 1906 was to give her a little child. One of her students, her first graduate, says, we'd like you to have our daughter, Miss Pope. And so that's her. Later on in the 1960s, this little girl became Gladys Brandt, big Hawaiian celebrity today. She became the first Hawaiian principal of the school for Hanai Mom. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. There's a book about her. That's her favorite verse. I almost fell to my floor when I read that the first time and saw that. That's my favorite verse. It's the verse that gets me through life, gets me up in the morning and carries me through the pain and suffering of life. I'm like, yay, Miss Pope, we're symbiotic here, you know. She gave to a people, she said, this verse basically said, finally, you know, whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, just, pure, lovely, good, think of those things. Because these kids have lost everything. They lost their king, they lost their queen, they lost the hula, everything was taken from them. The only constant in their life was one little lady from Ohio who raised them, helped them with their children forever. And she says, you need to just don't look back, look forward. Well, she died way too young, that's for sure. And she died actually in Chicago. Her family moved there. She told the girls, look, she had a big alumni reunion of 500 people. I don't feel so well. But I'll be back in the fall. I'm going to go stay with my sister, see her local doctor, and I'll be back. Well, she died of a stroke and never came back. And when my book was, the book released in November, there was a Hawaiian woman in the audience at the Honolulu Book Festival, and she had already read the book. It hadn't been out that long, but she'd already read it somehow. And I could tell she was in Hawaii. She belonged to that society, I can't say it right, society with the hat with black ribbon and the long white dress, and she stood up. I go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I mispronounced something or said something. But this is just recently, since in my heart still. She stood up and she turned around, she looked at the group, bottle of wine, she said, let's go get her. She belongs with us. I was like, oh, you get it. You get it. And that's her grave in Bucyrus. I really wish I would have seen it. She would have wanted to have been buried in Honolulu. There is no question about it. Scholarship still today, But do you think that, she had 3 scholarship funds that she did all for her students? Go get a job, I'm going to send you to teacher's college, pay it back when you start working. You want to be a nurse, send it back. What? You got a flood, here's the money, pay it back. Alumni, family takes care of family. This is Lydia Hall on her very last days. This is her friend, AOE, Ao, and Ao Wong Kong. They were Miss Pope's students, they lived the longest. So 98 years and 102 years old, there they are together, dear old friends. And this is one of my very favorite pictures, because this is the Kamehameha School faculty, and there's Ida Pope, and what's she doing? Looking in another direction. It's just perfect. And this is what her students wrote in the local newspapers. And then it was just such a privilege and a delight to take this historically ignored woman and just tell her story and hope it keeps getting told. And thousands of women of Hawaiian descent get the scholarship and didn't know who Ida M. Pope is. So hopefully the message people learn about, you know, the complicated takeover. It's just been such a privilege. And I thank Mr. Rossi for having me here today. And with you, it's a delight to be with people who care about history, even if it's not your area of particular, you know, fascination. It's all our history. And I'm delighted to answer any questions that any of you have.
Date 1890 to 1914. She was just 24.
Well, when she arrived in 1890, she was 24 years old. Actually, she was 27.
Oh,
That's when she arrived. That's her time in Hawaii. I do? Oh, what a sweetheart. Thank you. Yes, sir.
When did she visit San Diego?
Oh, Ida Pope. She came in, I believe it was right after the turn of the century, and she came here because we had a thriving silkworm farm. Did y'all know that? San Diego's silkworm farm, and she thought, that's going to be great for the girls. We're going to have a silkworm farm. It was in North Park, and I think it was one in Coronado. And it didn't pan out. I'm sure Mr. Bishop said, no, you're not having no silkworm farms here. The woman just run the school.
There was also a silk factory, silkworm farm in San Marcos for a while.
Oh, is that right?
In that same period, there was a processing factory there for a while. It didn't last too long, but I remember researching it.
Absolutely. It was a viable way to make money. It was a real cottage industry for San Diegans at the turn of the century to make that kind of money. San Diego was amazing how we made them out for their silkworms. And also, we had ostrich farms too. Yes, ma'am. About Charles Bishop or Milwaukee Bishop? The question is, this Bishop Museum, would you raise your hand if you've been to the Bishop Museum? All of you have. What a beautiful museum, am I right? Walk in a gleaming coalwood, oh my gosh. So, here's the story with the Bishop Museum. It's a kind of a romantic story. Probably about 1853, it was King Kamehameha the Great, number 1. King Kamehameha I, you say the ha, because everything gets a consonant. King Kamehameha's great-granddaughter, her name was Bernice Pauahi, and she was the cousin to little Kalani David Kalakaua. All raised together though, because the king and queen were Hanai with her, so she was her Hanai living together. Long story short, she falls in love with a sea captain from Boston named Charles Reed Bishop. She'd already been promised to marriage by her parents, and it was going to be to Lot. And so you're going to know, you need to marry another world child. You know, we're going to ensure our dynasty stays, but she fell in love. And the missionary community, Bernice was beautiful. Bernice had a Scottish father and a rural Hawaiian mother, and she was gorgeous. And she marries Charles Reed Bishop. King Lot is dying and says, get Bernice so we can keep the Kamehameha lines. So he asked for her to come. She says, I am sorry. I want to live a life of philanthropy. I don't want to rule any kingdom. I'm sorry. That's when the Kamehameha line died, when she refused it. But then she got breast cancer. She went on one of Spreckle's ships, by the way, to San Francisco for the surgery that went horribly wrong. She comes back and she dies, and she is a bazillionaire because she inherits every single, anybody who dies, she inherited. So the money was piling up, pile, 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 pile. Charles Reed Bishop, the sea captain, was then left with all her money. And he wasn't no slacker either. He just didn't marry for, he was a real entrepreneur. He safeguarded that money, establishing all the lands, keeping it for future generations. That's why Kamehameha Schools today is the most beautiful school you will ever. Has anybody ever seen it? It's hard to get up there. It's on the top of the mountain, but the Bernice, he's the one that started the museum to bring in from all over the world things that have been taken. Gorgeous museum. But that's in honor of Bernice Pauahi Bush. And Ms. Pope kept reminding Charles Reed Bishop, by the way, your wife would have wanted all of this, so this is why we need a hospital. Your wife, and she named everything after her, hoping to get his approval and money. So really interesting, but it's kind of a sad romantic story today. You'll see her name everywhere. So it's the Bernice Bishop Museum.
Did they have any issue?
Who?
The bishop? Did they have children?
No, they did not. They had no children. As a matter of fact, that's a whole other talk. Those children, all the children were raised together. This Chiefs Children's School, they're all given immunizations by the missionaries. I think he sterilized all of them. Why did none of them have children? And why am I reading the journals in the 1830s or 40s when they are repeatedly injecting all these little children who grow up to be the next 13 rulers? No one's having children? I'm going out on a limb to say there's a reason. There's a reason. It's horrifying reading that and then looking to the future going, oh, I wonder, oh. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure whom Mr. Bishop married. I lost that.
Mr. Bishop married the great-granddaughter of King Kamehameha. So he did good. It was a real love affair from all angles. Very, very, very beautiful.
Except she wasn't a princess anymore because they
No. That's right. Not a ruling, but a reigning. She was very, very special. And I don't have many books. I have like 4 and 4 of each one. You can have my author's price of $26, or you don't have to. And I'm happy to sign them. That's all I have. Any more questions? Aloha.